In 2001, the seventh largest company in America filed for bankruptcy. Overnight, 60,000 employees showed up to work on a Tuesday and were told, "You don't have a job anymore. And by the way, your pension? Gone too." The company was called Enron, and for 6 years straight, Fortune magazine had named it America's most innovative company. 6 years. Not once, not twice. 6 years in a row. And the whole thing, every dollar, every deal, every award, was a lie. Here's what makes this story different from every other corporate fraud you've heard about. Enron didn't hide their tricks. They published them in the annual report, in the footnotes that nobody read. The auditors signed off. The banks funded it. The journalists wrote glowing profiles. And nobody, not one person in a position to stop it, asked the one question that would have ended everything. How exactly do you make money? To understand how Enron fooled everyone, you have to understand what Enron told people it was. The story started in 1985. A mid-sized natural gas pipeline company in Texas called Internorth merged with another mid-sized natural gas company called Houston Natural Gas. Boring. Completely boring. The man who ran the new company was named Kenneth Lay. Ken Lay was not an engineer. He was not a pipeline guy. He had a PhD in economics and a gift, a genuine, extraordinary gift for making people believe whatever he wanted them to believe. And what he wanted them to believe was this: Enron wasn't a pipeline company anymore. Enron was the future. In the early 90s, the US government deregulated the natural gas market. Suddenly, gas wasn't a fixed-price commodity anymore. It was something you could trade, buy low, sell high, like stocks. Ken Lay looked at that and saw something most people didn't. He hired a consultant named Jeff Skilling, and Jeff Skilling had an idea. What if, instead of actually owning pipelines and moving gas, you just traded contracts? Promises to deliver gas, promises to buy gas, financial instruments, paper. No pipelines needed, no storage tanks, no trucks. Just trading. Skilling called it the asset-light model. The idea was elegant. Why own physical stuff, which is expensive, breaks down, needs maintenance, when you can just own the contracts for that stuff? Wall Street loved it. Analysts loved it. Business schools studied it. Jeff Skilling joined Enron full-time, and together with Ken Lay, he started building the most sophisticated financial illusion in corporate history. There was just one problem with the asset-light model. It didn't actually make money. Here's where it gets interesting and dark. To hide the fact that the trading business wasn't profitable, Skilling needed an accounting trick. He found one. It was called mark-to-market accounting. Here's how it worked, and stay with me because this is the engine that powered the whole fraud. Normally, when a company signs a contract to deliver gas over 10 years, they book the revenue as it comes in, year by year. Simple. Mark-to-market said, no. Book the entire estimated value of that contract today, right now, even though the gas hasn't been delivered, even though the money hasn't been received, even though half the assumptions behind the estimate might be completely wrong. Book it today. Call it profit. The SEC, the government agency that's supposed to prevent exactly this kind of thing, approved it in 1992. With that approval, Enron had everything it needed. Sign a contract, estimate the future profit, book it immediately. Show Wall Street the number. Stock goes up. Executives collect bonuses. Sign another contract. The only catch? You had to keep signing bigger and bigger contracts every single quarter, because last quarter's profit was already spent. and this quarter needed new numbers. It was a treadmill, and the only way to stay on it was to run faster. Enter Andrew Fastow. Fastow was Enron's chief financial officer. Young, sharp, and completely without scruples. His job, the actual job Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling gave him, was to hide the debt. Because here's what mark-to-market accounting created: a company that looked enormously profitable on paper while bleeding cash in reality. The trading business needed billions of dollars to operate, real dollars. But if Enron put that debt on its balance sheet, analysts would see it, ask questions, and the stock would fall. So Fastow built a solution. He created hundreds of separate companies called special purpose entities that technically existed on paper as independent businesses. Enron transferred its debt into those companies. The debt disappeared from Enron's books. The losses disappeared from Enron's books. And on paper, Enron looked perfect. These fake companies had names: LJM Cayman, LJM2, Raptor. Names that meant nothing to anyone reading the annual report. But here's the part that should have stopped everyone cold. The LJM companies, the ones hiding Enron's debt, were run by Andrew Fastow himself. The CFO of Enron was personally profiting from the companies Enron was using to hide its losses. This was in the footnotes, the public footnotes. Anyone with an annual report and 45 minutes could have read it. Nobody did. In March 2001, a journalist named Bethany McLean published an article in Fortune magazine. The headline was a question: is Enron overpriced? It was a short piece, calm, measured. It simply asked, how exactly does Enron make its money? Because looking at the filings, it's genuinely hard to tell. Enron's response was immediate and vicious. Jeff Skilling called her personally. He told her the article was unethical. Ken Lay flew to New York to meet with Fortune's editors and demand a retraction. 3 senior Enron executives showed up at her office to explain, for hours, why she was wrong. A company with nothing to hide doesn't do that. But Wall Street wasn't listening to Bethany McLean. Wall Street was listening to the analysts who had buy ratings on Enron. 16 out of 17 analysts covering the stock had it rated buy or strong buy. The stock was trading at $90 a share. Then something broke. Not a scandal, not an investigation, something quieter. The treadmill got too fast. Enron had expanded into broadband internet trading, buying and selling fiber optic capacity like it was gas contracts. The business lost money from day one and never stopped losing it. But they'd already booked hundreds of millions in mark-to-market profits from contracts that would never pay out. Then they tried water. Enron bought a water utility in South America, lost money, booked imaginary profits. Then weather derivatives, literally selling financial contracts based on the weather. Every new business was the same. Real losses hidden by fake profits, hidden by Fastow's fake companies, hidden in footnotes nobody read. But each new business needed more cash, more debt, more fake companies. And in August 2001, Jeff Skilling, the man who had built all of this, the man who had sold it to the world, suddenly resigned. He said it was for personal reasons. The stock dropped 15% in a single day. What followed was one of the fastest corporate collapses in history. Skilling's resignation spooked enough people that serious journalists started actually reading Enron's filings. And what they found, in the footnotes, in plain sight, was Andrew Fastow's web of fake companies. In October 2001, Enron announced a $1 billion write-down, real losses, finally on the books. The SEC opened an investigation. Fastow was put on leave. And then the thing that killed it faster than anything else. The credit rating agencies downgraded Enron's debt to junk. That was the end. Because Enron's fake companies, the ones hiding all the debt, had a clause. If Enron's credit rating fell below investment grade, the debt came back. All of it. Immediately. Back onto Enron's books. Billions of dollars appearing overnight. The stock went from $90 to less than $1 in 4 months. In December 2001, Enron filed for bankruptcy. At the time, it was the largest bankruptcy in American history. 60,000 people lost their jobs. Thousands of employees had their retirement savings in Enron stock because the company had encouraged them to invest their pensions in Enron shares. Some had their entire life savings in there. While executives were selling their shares, Skilling sold millions of dollars of stock in the months before the collapse. Employees were locked out of their accounts during a transition period and couldn't sell. They watched their retirement disappear, dollar by dollar, on a screen they couldn't touch. Ken Lay was convicted of fraud and conspiracy. He died of a heart attack before sentencing. Jeff Skilling was sentenced to 24 years in prison. He served 12. Andrew Fastow got 6 years. He cooperated with prosecutors. Arthur Andersen, one of the 5 largest accounting firms in the world, the auditors who signed off on everything, was convicted of obstruction of justice. The firm dissolved. 85,000 people lost their jobs at a company that didn't commit the fraud, just enabled it. So what does any of this actually tell us? 3 things. First, complexity is a weapon. Enron's fraud worked because it was complicated enough that most people assumed someone else had already checked it. The banks assumed the auditors checked it. The auditors assumed the lawyers checked it. The lawyers assumed the banks checked it. Nobody checked it. Second, the footnotes matter. Everything Enron did was technically disclosed. Not clearly, not honestly, but it was there. The people who asked simple questions, like Bethany McLean, found it almost immediately. The people who didn't ask never looked. Third, when a company can't explain how it makes money, that's not sophistication, that's a warning. Jeff Skilling had a name for the people who worked at Enron. He called them the smartest guys in the room. They were smart. Some of them were genuinely brilliant. But they were so focused on being clever that nobody stopped to ask whether any of it was real. 60,000 people paid for that question not being asked. With their jobs, their pensions, their retirement, while the smartest guys in the room walked out with millions. That's not innovation. That's Enron.